Hello everyone, welcome to week 9, and this is the week for JavaScript arrays and loops. I hope you have been learning and doing the JavaScript assignments, as I know it can be a bit challenging, and this part of the course is a bit challenging to students. But I assure you, this is the last week for JavaScript, and from the next week, there would be something much easier and which you will find much easier, which would be Excel. But nevertheless, we have to do this, and this is one of the most interesting and important concepts about coding, that is arrays and loops. These are the two things or two concepts we are going to be doing this recitation. I would suggest to make the best use again, whenever I try, say to pause and try yourself, try and do yourself. Also, don't feel hesitant to make changes and go wrong. Like even after you have the solution, you type it out and try and make some changes and see like what are the mistakes that can be made and that you shouldn't. So like, or because you have the solution for this recitation and you usually do not have the solution for assignments, it's better to like make the mistakes and understand your mistakes in the recitations rather than being confused like why your program is not working for the assignment. So that would be my suggestion for this. And saying this, let's get started with the concepts. So today's agenda would be understanding the JavaScript arrays and loops, how to create them, how to use them, how to change them, and what all things we can do, like using arrays, loops, and we are also going to be using functions, which we learned in last recitation, but just a little bit. You won't be expected to do much. And also we have created a file for you so you don't have to do the basic changes and focus only on the concept at hand. So starting with it, what is an array? So basically till now we know that we have learned variables, and variables are the things that store some value for you. Array is just a collection of these variables. Suppose you want to define 100 variables and which are in some way, let's say, similar usually. So you can think of them as a list of variables and which are stored under the same name, but they might have a numerical address. So maybe think of it like a table and which has an address. So looking at the figure at the on right, you can see that this can be an example of an array. So where and every element is stored at an address for that array, and the addresses are usually numerical, so that you can, whenever you want to get that element, you can just put in the address and you can get the fetch the element. So the important thing to remember here is the addressing starts from 0 and goes on increasing by 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the element 25 is stored at the index 0. Similarly, the element 98 is stored at the address 3. And how to get, you can get any specific element by calling out the name of the array. So let's say this was called ARR. So we'll say ARR and we'll put in the brackets, square brackets and 3. And that would be our way of getting 98. So we see we can store a lot of values inside our arrays, and we have a way to get these values whenever we want. Another way is loop, but we'll come to that. So this is the declaration. So let's start with loops. So loops are nothing but a repetition. Suppose you want to do a task over and over and over again. How do you do it? You do it using loops. Let's say I want you to print hello on your screen 10 times. You can do document.write hello, 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 hello. Or like if I want you to write, that's even simpler. You can just copy and paste the code for hello. But let's say if it's something different. Let's say I want you to print all the numbers from 1 to 100 on a screen. Then it would be tough for you to like copy and change and change and change. And that is where loop helps us, where there is a repetition and there's some sort of a counting involved, and you can use some logic to print that. So I think it will be more clear when we do some examples. And one of the examples could be like printing all the elements of the array, because there's a lot involved. So you don't want to do like, if its name is ARR, so you don't want to do ARR 0, ARR 1, ARR 2, ARR 3. Instead, we'll just use loops and count from 0 to 4. So loops work on a concept of counting, and then that helps us to do our task, whatever it is, based on that counting. Okay. So starting with the initial rules on how to use them. So just like you declare variables, you declare arrays. So you say var words. So you declare a variable, which is an array. So that says new, and array is the keyword, so you cannot change that. And words would be the name of your array. And it will have all these things. So you can have item 1, item 2, item 3. So new array, it will have hello, world, come, signs. So if you see, again, the concept of counting or indexing is still there. So hello is stored at the 0th index, world is stored at the first index, welcome at 2, and signs at 3. So this is an array of length 4, whose addresses start from 0 and go on till 3. Okay, and this is, as we discussed, so name of this array is words. So words of 3 at 3 address is the 4th element of the array, which is signs. If you say word, if you want to get hello, you can do words.0. Similarly, for the loop, we are using a for loop here, and this is how you initialize a loop. So for you declare a variable which is the counter of the loop, which does the counting of the loop, which tells you how much you want to learn. And this contains 3 conditions. That is where the counting will start from. So we say counting will start from 0 when I is 0, and till where it will go on. So it will go on till it has reached words.length, which is, let's say, 4. Instead, you can write 4 as well. So counting will start from 0, and until I is less than 4, it will go on. And every time you count one thing, do you change your counter? You increase by 1. You increase your count by 1. So this loop will start from 0. Then in the next cycle, it will have the iteration 1. Then it will have 2. Then it will have 3. And once it reaches 4, since it's no longer less than its length, it will come out of the loop and the loop will end. So this is how this particular loop will run. And all your logic will come inside these curly brackets, what you want to do on every count. So let's say if you wanted to print every element, you can do words and square bracket I, and which it will print all the values. Don't worry if these things aren't very clear right now. This is just an introduction, and things will keep on getting clearer and clearer as you go on and do examples. I'm just stressing these are the only 2 concepts that we're going to learn and practice. So I hope it will be more clear towards the end of the recitation as well, if it's not now. So starting with the file, I have download this file, recitation 9, array basics initial.html. From Canvas, it can be accessed like wherever you find this recording link. I think it's there itself. I've posted it along with the slides. So you can find this. And let's get started. Okay, so I have the program with me. So this is the file. Let me run this for you as well and see what it is. What does it have? Okay, so this is the file that we have, and we don't want you to print all this and maybe like get confused here. So we have created all the template for you. We don't want you to get confused, like where do you want to put your code, like config. We have done everything for you. The main objective of this is to focus on the arrays and the loops. Okay, so this is the initial file which we need to complete. These are the tasks that we want to do. And finally, if we are successful, our final version should look something like this. So basically, this is our end goal for this recitation, filling this out, people having books, they have a names. So these people have these many books, and finding the average of those books, and then creating a bar graph out of that. So this would be our end goal for this recitation. And we're going to go along in the similar manner we go on. I'll try and go through some exercises myself, you can see, and then I'll give you some tasks which you have to try, and obviously I'll give you the solution for that. But I want you to like try this on your own, make as many mistakes and learn from them as you can, because at one point or the other you will make the mistake, so it's better to make it in the recitation. So let's see what we have here. So we have some already defined functions here, print array. And so coming here, so these are a few functions: print array, print reverse, find average, find largest index. And these are the names. So if you see, we have an array like we declared last time. We had words, this time we have names. And this contains the name of, I think, 10 people. So it's an array of size 10. And again, we have a books array, which is of size 10. So if you just enter a number here, it creates an empty array of that size 10. And then later on, we go on and fill it. So if you see here, like we discussed in the example, we have a for loop which starts from I is equal to 0 to I is less than 10, and it increased by 1. So this loop is counting from like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is the counting of the loop. And why we are counting like this is because the index of the array starts from 0 and it's of size 10. So that is the last address of that array would be 9. And then we are just filling the books of I is that index. So we are accessing each element. So right now we have like an empty array, which is of like, it's blank. All the 10 elements are blank in that, and we are trying to fill them. So this is the books array right now, and we will be trying to fill in that. I'm trying to show you to visualize how it is. So right now it's blank. So after we started, so for example, on the first iteration, when we start the counting, when we enter the loop, all of the elements are blank, and it is of size 10. So we have, let's say this is the books array, it will be blank initially. And what this line does is it just gives you a random number between 10 to 99. I'll come to that logic, but just trust me, like this just gives you a random number in this range. Okay. And once you have a number, let's say first number we have is 20. So first time rand is equal to 20. So we fill books of I equal to rand. So we fill that books variable books array with the value 10. Where do we fill it? At the 0th address or the 0th index. So first it will 10. Now if it's now as it has executed everything inside the loop, now it will change the value of I or the counter to I plus plus, which is I plus 1, and I will become 1 now. Again, this line will be done and we'll get another random number. Let's say, oh, last time it was 20. Let's say it's like 90 this time. So now as books of I now means books of 1. That means it has gone to the next address. And we'll fill that address with the new random number, which is 90. And this will go on till we have all the random numbers here. And it will go on till we have filled the array till we are at address 9, and after it becomes 10, it will just end the loop and not go inside it again. So again, this is how it works. Let me show you how it will work. So this function populates or fills in the books array and gives it some random number of books to everyone, from Joey to Mark, Joey to Paul. And so our first function is to traverse the array in order. So we want to traverse the books owned in order. So we want to traverse these two arrays and print them on our web page. How can we do that? So we know that document.write is a function which helps us write on the browser. And if we see, If you see right now, this is our web page. So traversing books in order, we want to print all the books of all the elements of the books array here and all the names here. So we have a hint here as well, like call print array as the argument array with books. So we know functions, how do they work, right? And this is here why they're useful, because this is a fairly mid-sized programs. It's better to divide our tasks into function. So we'll have something to print all this inside a function. This is a small task, and then we'll call that function, which will do our task here. So here we'll just call the function. We already have the print array function, which is here. So as I told you, function is like a small program. It has an input, which is an array this time, and it will return output. This time it doesn't need to return an output. We just wanted to write the values. So that will be its output. So you see the body of everything is here for you. So let's say you get an array, which is A. First time it would be books. So we want to print all the elements. So how do we go about printing that? We have a for loop. So for where I is equal to 0. You see, now we want, so our counting will start from 0 and it will go till 10. Or instead of 10, we can do a dot length, which is equal to 10 because we'll pass books into it, which is of length 10. But if it's something else, a dot length will become the length of that array. Okay. And I plus plus. And then we'll have, so I'm keeping this line enclosed here. And now we want to print that array. So we want to replace this. So if you want to print, so every time it goes on, like we populated the array, we'll do that in the same logic. So our array is A this time. And if we call the ith value, so I keeps on counting in the loop from 0 to 9 or 0 to whatever the length of the array is. And this will, and if we print every time the element we have A of I, it will give us all the values of that. And let me just add a break here. Let me add a space here for clarity and save it. So this function will print an array. Whatever array is passed into it, it will go to each of its element and it will do a document dot write on all of its elements, because A of I will start from A of 0 because the counting starts from 0, and it will go on till the length of the array. And when it reaches that length, it will stop counting there. So this is it. Now our task is not done yet. We still need to call that array. If we don't call that array, then that function will never be called, and we'll be just sitting like, why our program is not working. So let's call our function and give the input to it. And this time we want the books, so we'll pass books into it. And this is all. So let me save this. Let me go back to our program and let me reload. So you see, we have all our books printed in order. And you see, these are changing every time. And now let me come to that point. So you see, we have printed all the elements of that array. And this is changing every time. Why is that? Now that is because of this function rand, which gives us a random number every time we run it. And this is done using, so math.random gives you a function, gives you a number between 0 to 1. Now then we multiply that number with 90. So it basically gives us a number between 0 and 0.99. We multiply that number by 90. Okay. And then we do a floor and then we add 10 to it. So that is our duty. So multiplying it by 90 and taking the floor, it will give us a random number between 0 to 89. And if then we add 10 to it, so we get a random number from 10 to 99. So just if you don't understand it properly, you can Google this, but this is not one of the important concepts we are focusing on. Just know that this random number is giving us a random number every time. This rand variable has, and that's why we have different number of books. So now I have a task for you. Try and pause this video and try doing the same thing, like printing all the elements of the owners of those books, which are the names and which is stored in the names array. Okay, so if you have tried that once, let me just see. So this time we don't need anything else because we already have a function which prints a whole array, and that has printed books for us. We can use the same function again, and that's why the functions are important, because we can use them again and again to make our life easier. We don't have to write a loop again or anything. We'll just call that function, and this time instead of giving books as an input, we'll give it the input as names, and it will print all the names for us. So let me just save it and do it so you can see. So this is the names array. So we know that Joey this time has 11 books, Mary has 30 books, similarly Paul has 50 books. And we see the names are the same, but random numbers at every time. So every time we run this program, everyone has a different number of books from last time. Okay. So this was the counting. Now on to the next task. And you can follow the slides for the, I have written the task in them if you want, but I think we'll just go through the program. Now we want to traverse the array in reverse order. That is, if this is the array, we want it to be printed in the reverse order, like 72, 24, 21, 38 till 78. And similarly, we want for the names as well, Paul, Tina, Andrew, till, and Joey should be the last name. So we want to print them in reverse order, here and here. And this is a task. Maybe try it on your own. I'll give you a call, give you some hints. Like as we had print array, we'll have a print reverse function, which you will call here. It's defined here. All you have to do is think of how you can count backwards using this loop. There could be multiple ways of doing this, but you can just try and see. Like here we were counting from 0 to 9. Now we have to think of something in counting in reverse order. So pause the video here and try this if you can manage it, or at least think about it. Okay. All right. So if you had some time to think about it, let's get on with it. We'll start with the for loop this time. So because we want to traverse in the reverse order, first element we want to print is the last element. So what's the address of last element? That is basically 9, and which is equal to a dot length, because it's of size 10, because the counting is from 0 to 9. That is a dot length minus 1. And where do we want, what would be our last element here if we are counting, at what address that would be? It would be at the 0th address. So till I is greater than or equal to 0. Once it hits 0, after that we don't want anything, if we don't want it to print. And what do we want every time we count? Like 9, how do we go from 9 to 8? We subtract a number. So that is how we are counting. Let's say you had to like print only the odd elements, you would have skipped by 2. Okay, so that also, like, then you would have done I minus 2, but here I minus minus is enough. That is, we are subtracting by 1 every time we do this, and then it's just simple like last time. Because our counting variable has changed this time, it's going from 9 to 0, and it's I again. So this part would be similar to last time. So a of I, and let me just give a space for better clarity, and let me save it. But our task is again not over yet. We need to call the function. Print reverse and books. So let me just save it, go back, see. So now you see 87, 89, 87, 87, 89, 89, last element is 44, last element is first element is 44. So we have printed it in reverse order. So now the task for you is to do the same with the names array. So take a moment, pause the video and try it yourself. Okay, so if you've done it, I think it should be pretty easy. It's because it's in the same line as the last one. And we just need to call the print reverse function again, but this time we'll just give the input as names. So let me just save it. Also, don't forget your semicolons because that could cause problems sometimes. And we have our names in reverse order as a Joy, Mary, Tom, Joy, Mary, Tom, Paul at last, Paul, Dana, and you have all that. Okay. So now we have used like functions to interact with the arrays, and we have used all these three concepts together: functions, arrays, and loops. Okay. Now let's do some more interesting tasks with it, apart from just printing all the elements. So suppose we want to find the average of all the books, and suppose we found like average number of books everyone has. So basically, if you want to calculate the average of it, how do you do that? Okay, so we know how to get each element, right? Using a loop, we have just learned. You just start a counter from starting till the end, and just do name of the array, and in square brackets just give the counter value or the index value, and it will keep on getting all the elements. So if you want to find average of all this, just first think how you will do it mathematically. Okay, and if you have like, take a moment and see if you can try and do that using the function. We already have a function for you. And if you, what you basically want to do in average is basically calculate the sum of all the numbers. So basically you'll have to go to each variable every time still, but you'll have to add them somewhere. And after you have added them, you need to divide by the number of elements the total number of elements that were there. This is basically your average formula. So take a moment. We have a function called find average, which takes in an array, and try writing the logic for average if you can. Again, you will need loops here. You'll need something to store the sum of all the values, and then you'll have to divide it and return that average. Okay, so pause the video here and try this on your own. Okay, so if you had some time, let's get started with it. So let's say we have a variable called sum, which is equal to 0 initially. Now again, like we did in printing, we went to all the elements. So I want to go and have all the elements at least once. So my counter will go in the same way. For variable I is equal to 0, I is less than a dot length, and I plus plus. But this time I don't want to do a document dot write. This time I want to add all those numbers together. So I'll add them in my sum, which was 0 initially. And now my sum will be equal to sum is equal to the sum that I already have plus the new a of I. So for all the value. So initially when the first number comes it will be added to 0. So 0 plus first element. Now that is stored as a sum. Now next time another element comes in, it will be added to the already existing sum. And this is how we'll like keep on summing all the elements. And finally, if we have everything in sum, we'll just return sum divided by 10, or we can just do a dot length, because we might next time we might have like 11 books or 12 books or 13 books depending on the size of array. So we'll just do a dot length. Okay, and now we want to call it. So here they're storing it an average, so we'll just call the function here find average, and we'll pass books into it. Again, this task cannot be done for names because what's the average of names really? So we can only do this for numbers, so that's why we are only doing it for books this time. And let's go back and let's run it. So see, our average is 50.1. You can put them in a calculator and see if it comes out. It should come out to 50.1. Okay, so that was one of the uses. So instead, like we can count forward using loops, we can count backwards, we can get element every time and do some operations on it. Maybe like we can find the highest, lowest, and that's what we have to do next. And the next we have to do is having the largest number of books owned. So what are the largest number of books owned by a person and who is that person? So we need to tell both of these things. So like this time someone has 96 books. Who is he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 6. So Eric is the person having the largest books, 96. But this we can tell by looking. We need to program it so that every time there's a new random function of books, we get that value. We get who's the person with the most number of books and what are the number of books that he owns. So you see one similarity here is these both are at a position of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These both are at a position of 5 in the array. So their address in their each respective arrays is 5. So if somehow I get that address of where the largest, like the person with the largest books, largest number of books is, I can get both of these things because if I have the address, both of them will share the same address. So I can just use the names of their respective arrays and pass this address to into it. So this is how we are going to approach it. We want to find the address where the largest number of books are, and then we can get both the values where it is. I know it doesn't make much sense saying into it because we can do it by saying, but to have it in program, this is the logic we are going with. So please bear with me. So we have a function called file largest index, and that is like the address. And this is our function here. And let's see how we'll. So let's say we have a variable called, okay, I forgot this here. So don't forget to declare your variables properly. Variable largest books. So we want to find the, so we have the books array and we want to find out where the maximum number of books are, and we want to find that address where those books, which address they are, because we can feed the same address to the names array and can get the person who has those largest number of books. So let's say the largest books are, let's say the first element has it. So for this is just a start, and we'll say variable largest book address. So I'm writing a long name, you don't need that, it's just for like understanding purposes. And let's say that's 0 because we are first assuming that the first person has the largest number of books. He is at address 0. Okay, and now we'll go to all the values of the books array and check if it was right. Like if it was the largest, then it will be like we'll compare it with all the elements and just keep on checking, keep a track of what the largest was. So let's do it. So this time I already have the first element. I have assumed it to be the largest. So I'll, instead of starting with 0, I'll start with 1. Then I want to go till a dot length and I plus plus. No. Now what we want to do is we want to compare this to address, and like, so if you go to the first element, or let's say here, so let's say we have 81, then we go to the next element and compare that if is 81 more than 52. So because 81 is more than 52, we want that 81 should stay as the largest number of books and address should be 0. Similarly, we'll compare to all of this. When it finds a number more than it, like 96, we want our largest number of books to change to 96 and the new address that is to be stored is of 96, which is 5. Okay, so this is our main logic. So we want to do like if a number where we are like a of I, which is the books at that number, is greater than whatever our current largest books are, which was like 80 in that case, then what do we want to do is, firstly, we want to change our largest books. So largest books would be equal to the new number because this is the new largest. Maybe we can find another bigger number after this. So we'll change it again then. But current largest, we wanted to make the new number that we find, which is more. And then we also want to update the address of the largest book. So largest. Okay, my spelling is a bit off. And we want it to be I. So I is the address where the largest number of books currently are. And this is how we will compare it everywhere. And now what we want to return. Okay. So this is how, and if the books are smaller, then we don't want to do anything. Our whatever we assumed was the largest is still the largest. Now we'll just return. What do we want to return? That is the largest index. So the largest index is largest book address, which is the address we have kept on updating. So largest book address, did I make it somewhere? Okay, no, this is correct. And because this will give me the largest address, and we'll call it for the books. And now that I have the where, that is the address, I'll just change it to address. And we'll say largest would be, the largest number of books would be on, like we discussed earlier, so books of this address. And similarly, who owns these books would be the person on the same address in the names array. And then we're just gonna print that. And let's see if our program works or not. So you see, so the largest number of books owned is 86 this time, and we can see it is 86, and it is held by whom? It is held by Paul, which is, yeah, Paul owns the most books. If we try it again, here we can see 99 is the highest. Who owns it? Tom. And we can see 99 and Tom. So we see our program works, our logic works. So I'll suggest you to pause here and look back on whatever all we did and try to understand, like, you know and you understand what we all did, and like how each counting was being done and how every calculation we did was going on. So just pause here and go through everything which we had till now. Also, let's see if you have done that. Let's see if we have. This is our last task, that is having a bar graph. So Joey, because Joey has 90 books, there should be 90 stars in front of him. Mary has 87, so she should have 87 stars, 81, and this is how we are building a bar graph. Eric has only 19 books, so 19 stars should be there in front of him. So you see, whatever the number here is, we have the same number of stars there. And it's sort of a repetition, you see, if you want to see. And the concept here is like nesting of loops. So we had like tables inside tables, we had lists inside lists. We can also have loops inside of loops. So counting inside of counting. Basically, what we want to do is go through the arrays, both the arrays, and do counting from 1 to 10. So if we have 1, if so starting with Joey, on first count there is Joey and 90 books, and then first we have the number of books. We want to count from 1 or 0 to the number of books they have and print all the stars. And then after that counting is over, we want to go to the next person of our initial counting, that will be 87 and Mary, and then for them to count again. So here we need loops inside loops, which is the nesting of loops. Okay, so let's get into it, how we can do that. Okay. So because we want our initial counting, because we want every person's name at least once in the bar graph and number of books they own, we'll have to count that. So variable I is equal to 0. I is less than, let's say, books dot length and I plus plus. So what we want here is, we want document dot write, and first we want to print their name, so we'll say names of I. Okay, and then we want to give a break, so we'll just give a break here. So this is just we'll move it to the next line, the next line will be, and once we have this, we want to print the number of books that they have. Oops. So this is how we can print the names and the books. Okay, let's say we didn't have to make a bar graph, we just had to print those. We already know how to do that. So we have like Joey 60, Mary 52, Tom 69. So this was easy. We did it like the last time, but this time we just printed both of them together rather than having like this and having a space in between. We had like a line break and printed all of this. Now what we want is in front of 60, I want 60 stars. In front of 52, I want 52 stars. 69, I want 69 stars. 87, I want 87 stars, and our task would be done. So let's see how we can do that. So how many stars I want is equal to the books I. Okay, so this is like if they have 50 books, it will be books I, like 50 stars I need. Okay, and our counting would be 1 to 57 or 0 to 56. So let's do it. So we'll have another loop for drawing the stars. For j is equal to, and let's give a break after this because we want them to be in the next line. Or let's give a space here, and oops, we'll give a space for the stars and we'll give a break here after every line. Not here, after the loop. Okay, now we do for j is equal to 0, or let's count from 1. You can count it whatever, and we will do j is less than or equal to, so starting from 1, if they have like 10 books, we want 10 stars. So if we start counting from 1, we need to go till 10. Okay, so j is less than and equal to 10, or instead of 10, how many stars we want is books of I. We do I plus plus. So this is our counting is done. Now what we want to do at every count is document dot write, and what do we want to print every time is 1 star for every book. Every book they have will have 1 star, and this will keep going on. And see, this was just like 3 or 4 lines, and we did a lot of stuff with that. We could print, like, we created a bar graph with all of this. Oops, I think something is not working. Let me see, did I forget a bracket somewhere? Oh, I did I plus plus. I had to do j plus plus. So this is will be I. Books of I is that, but our new variable is j. So we want to do j plus plus. Sorry about that. And we have our bar graph here. As you can see, 32 will have 32 stars, 54, this. And this was all. So you have the code here. Coming back to the slides, I've done it each step. So maybe you will want to go through it again, practice it again, and try and do that. But I hope something, or you got something out of this recitation about understanding of loops, arrays, and that is a very important concept, and that would be the last concept for the whole JavaScript topic. And from next week, we'll be getting on Excel. We'll be starting with Excel, and hope you excel in that. Pun intended. And that is all for this week's recitation. I'll see you all next week. Have a good week, and don't forget to mark your attendance here. Thank you.